everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you all. I've gotten the chance to speak with a lot of you during the 2 days of this conference, and for many of you, this is your first LeadDev. And not just LeadDev, but first tech conference at all. And I want to say that you really hit a slam dunk coming to a LeadDev event. I want to thank the organizers for helping LeadDev become a home for me. So please keep coming because I'm sure it will become a home for you as well. I've worked in software development for a long time, and there are certain lessons that I've learned throughout my time as a software developer writing code every day to becoming a manager that I want to share with you all. But before I get started, I want to do a quick poll. How many of you are still looking for your first job in tech? You're still looking for that first job? Okay. All right. Okay, we're all gainfully employed. That's amazing. Okay. How many of you are in your first year of being in tech, whether as a developer or as a manager? All right, not that many. How many people are you like years 2 through 3? Raise your hand. Okay, a few. How many of you are managers? There we are. That's everybody. Okay, hands down. How many of you tried management, decided you didn't like it, and went back to being a coder? Yeah, a few people. I've been almost there as well, so I understand the struggle. So this is a very diverse audience, leaning a bit more senior. And what I want to go through are, at the different stages of a career, things that I wish someone told me when I was at that stage. I'm trying to pay it backward and forward by sharing things that I've learned often the hard way. So my career started at Accenture, a really large company. I was in their technology practice back in 1997. And that's where I first learned how to write code for a living. That's where I became a manager. I am now an eng manager at GitHub, and so that's where I am now. But between these two goalposts are a few other consulting companies. I had my startup era when I was learning how to work at smaller companies with fewer resources. And then I went to a big consulting company, to a smaller company, and now I'm here at GitHub. And again, I've learned a lot of lessons throughout this time, and I always began to think about my career as I go into year 25 plus about how would I apply what I know now to the things that I wish I knew back then. How can I make myself more backwards compatible with the knowledge that I have now? And the key thing that I want everyone to take from this talk is your career is not something that just happens to you. You have agency and control, and you can steer your career in the direction that you want it to go. And I also want to share a little more about the things that I don't think people say out loud enough, because I think there are a lot of hidden truths that people keep in their minds that I want to say verbally. Now, again, I'm a staff engineering manager at GitHub. I've learned a lot of these lessons the hard way, but as I go throughout the stages, I'm going to describe the stage. I'm going to share the big aha moments, like Laura Hogan said, when the light bulb went off. And then I'm going to share a few lessons about how to navigate and thrive at that stage. I want to give a caveat. Everyone's journey is different. Mine is mostly based in North America and in the time period from the late 90s to the present day. But I think that there are certain canon events that happen in everyone's career. That's getting that first job, getting that first promotion, navigating the first hard conversation. And I think that you'll find that some of the things that you've heard other speakers say are also going to resonate with what I'm going to share with you all. So let's get started. In fact, let's start at the beginning. Let's go into getting hired. Now, you all have gone through this stage, and I want to go through things that I wish that I knew back then. The big aha moment that if I could go back in time and tell myself when I was first trying to get that first job, and this is, again, the late 90s. I'm trying to get a job while still in college. I am going through a lot of interview prep. I'm doing mock interviews. I'm doing resume reviews. I'm doing a lot of work to get ready for this interview. But one thing that I wish someone told me is that you have about 5 minutes to impress the interviewer. This is something that we're trained not to do, but after hiring and interviewing a lot of engineers over my career, I try to not fall prey to this, but the interviewer probably knows in the first 5 minutes roughly if you're a fit for the job. And I wish that I told myself that someone told me this when I was starting my career, because I tried to prepare for the entire interview. I was always going to say, I'm going to start with this, and then go to that, and then go to the next thing. But you really need to make the sale in those first 5 minutes. So how do you do that? Well, there's something that your mom or your dad or someone who raised you probably told you that's important. That's be on time. Be punctual. It's a very small thing, but even showing up to an online interview on Zoom, it's very important that you're punctual. In fact, I will be there early. That just shows a sense of seriousness that will resonate with the person who's going to interview you. The other thing that I would advise you to do is to make sure that when they ask, do you have any questions, that you have questions. I've gone through many interviews when I get to the end where I've asked them several questions, and I asked them, do you have any questions? And the answer is, I think I'm good. And the reason why that's not a very good way to end the interview is that the question period where you're asked, do you have any questions, is an opportunity to show your interest in working at the company. Some good questions to ask at this point are things like, is this position a backfill, which means that you're replacing someone who has left, or is it a new role that you're staffing a brand new team? And that means that you're trying to understand, is this a hole that they're trying to fill, or is this a new tree that they're trying to plant? And that's a very nuanced difference. And asking that question helps me understand that you thought about working at this company and the role that I'm trying to fill. Now, one thing that I want to go into about that early first job, and I'm sure that you all went through this, is negotiating that salary. When you're trying to get your first job, often the temptation is to just take the first offer because you want money, you want to work, you have bills to pay. But I highly encourage you all that you negotiate the salary in terms of total compensation. It's very easy to just think about the salary, how much money, whether it's in dollars or in pounds or in whatever, am I making, and think about retirement, think about bonus, think about stock. And as you're negotiating the offer, that you try to figure out, well, what levers can I pull? Maybe they cannot move on the salary number, but perhaps there are ways that you can get more stock or get an early vesting period for your retirement. It's really important that you understand the entire package. So those are some of the things that I wish that I did. One of the most powerful things that you can do is develop multiple offers. After all, the company that you're trying to work at, they're interviewing multiple people. So you should interview multiple companies. One of the most powerful negotiating strategies that you have is having multiple offers. Because by having multiple offers, you're going to get a sense of what is the market providing right now, what's the salary range, what's the compensation package, and that's powerful. All right, you got in the first job, you're in your first year, you're probably doing a lot of learning on the job because that's what you do. No matter how good your onboarding is, you're still learning a lot during that first year. And I want to say that no matter how good the onboarding process is, that first year as a developer, and I know that some of you may have to think back to when that first year was, is hard. It's tough. You're learning to go from the concepts you might have learned at boot camp or that you taught yourself to apply it to what this company needs. And the one thing, the big aha moment that I would say that I had in that first year, or that I wish someone told me, is that your work does not speak for itself. I used to think that my code is running, it's fine, it's merged to production, I'm going to the next ticket, whether that's in Jira or GitHub projects or whatever you're using to track work, and I'm fine. No, your work has no mouth, so it cannot speak for itself. It's very important that you understand your career like a cinema. Now, I know that a lot of us watch movies online, either on Netflix or on Max or whatever your streaming platform of choice, but there's still theaters that you can drive by, and the theater will tell you what's playing at the theater. Well, you need to have a sense of the marquee of your career. What is playing in your role at the company? And when you talk about what you're doing at the company, I highly encourage you to not focus on activity. It's very easy to think about activity. You can say, well, I made this many commits, I had this many PRs merged to production, I had this many things that were deployed, here are all the tickets that I've closed. Working with the tools that we have today, it's very easy to have activity. And while activity is important, we reward impact. Impact is the way that you can make the case for the work that you're doing, for getting higher rewards, for getting promoted. You have to talk about impact. And by impact, I mean things like I helped to improve our code review process, or I did an audit of our test coverage, and I improved our test coverage by so many percent points. If you can frame your work in terms of the impact, if you can put a numerical value, then that's so key. That is so powerful. One of the things that I coach the people who report to me to do is to create what's called a brag document, or a brag doc. And a brag doc is a living document of what you've done. You don't need to update it daily, but probably every other week is really useful. And by doing this, you're creating a living document of what you've done. Again, not just activity, but impact. And when you are diligent in keeping your brag doc up to date, what you're doing is that you're making it easier on yourself and for your manager when you get to the point where you're having to do that mid-year review or that end-of-year review where you're trying to remember what you did 4 or 5 months ago. Most people cannot remember what we did 4 or 5 days ago. So by having a brag doc, you're creating an artifact that you can use to guide your career. So that is so important. So when I go back to impact, it's very important that you understand whatever ladder you have at your company. How many of you have a career ladder at your company that describes the different levels, like 1-year engineer, senior engineer, etc.? Okay, most people. Amazing, very good. A career ladder is a document of what the company expects of you at each level. And as you might imagine, as you go up the ladder, the work gets more complex. It usually gets a bit more fuzzy. You get less hand-holding as you go up. And by linking what you're doing in terms of impact to the career ladder and documenting that in your brag doc, you're creating a chain of documentation that's going to be really helpful for you in explaining what you've done over the year. So it's really important that you not just keep a brag doc that's not tethered to anything. You want to tether your document to the career ladder. The other thing that I wish that someone told me early in my career is what the previous speaker talked about, one-on-ones. A one-on-one is your manager taking time out of their busy schedule to spend detailed, undivided attention time with you. And one of the biggest signs that you respect that investment is that you bring topics to the one-on-one. I remember early in my career, I was like, I got to talk to my manager. It's time to have a one-on-one, which we didn't call them that back then. But I felt like it was something that I had to do. And I've grown to learn that it's a powerful tool for you as an individual contributor to really powering your career. And one thing that you can do to really empower your one-on-ones is to bring topics to the one-on-one, right? Most managers have a one-on-one doc that's shared with you, that they'll throw topics in, so they'll have announcements that you should know about from the company. They'll have maybe things that you need to remember to take your annual training. But when you, as an IC, add topics, that gets me excited, because that means that you're really investing in this time that we have together. Maybe the topic could be, I'm having trouble understanding our deployment cycles, or I'm having trouble understanding the rewards process. By doing that, you're signaling to your manager that you're investing in them while they are investing in you. So that's super powerful.
I really hope you're enjoying this video. Do you know LeadDev offers way more than this?
I'm a fan of the LeadDev newsletter. I find really practical knowledge about leadership.
Then I was like, oh, there is this big community here doing all of these content, so let me figure out a little more, let me dig in a little, what do you have?
So make sure you check out LeadDev.com.
All right, this might be a bit controversial, but one thing I wish that I knew in that early part of my career is that if your manager was asked by their manager or by the leadership team, who are the key people on your team? Because we think that probably half the team are the critical pillars, and the other half, they're just there. Your manager could probably answer that question without a lot of thought, because we know the critical people on our team. We know the people who are making the strongest contributions. And it's important that you know that, because by effectively making use of one-on-ones, by having a brag document and managing up, you're increasing the odds that you're in the right half of that split. So everyone, when you go back to your manager and talk to them, ask, am I in the bottom half or the top half? I'm kidding, don't do that, don't do that. But what you should do is effectively manage your career through one-on-ones, through keeping track of what you're doing, and by making sure that your manager knows that you're as invested in their management of you as they are. All right, so you're in the first 3 years, you're getting more complex work, the work's become a bit more fuzzy. What's really important to know during this time frame? Well, one of the things that I struggled with in the first 3 years of my career was understanding, well, how valuable am I? Do the people I work with even see me? Do they really even understand what I do here? And there are a couple ways that you can try to understand this, but one of the most effective ways, one of the most effective signals that I've seen of am I building the trusting relationships that are essential to a career, especially early, is, do people share things with me that are private? Do people share things with me ahead of time? And I remember when I first started my career, because I'm a classical introvert, I know I'm on stage in front of all these people, but I'm a, by definition, introvert. I just wanted to go to work and go home after I got my stuff done. But I learned that if you build relationships properly, then you're no longer subject to surprise. Because when I wasn't doing this, I would always be surprised. Oh, this person's moving between departments, or there's a rework coming, or this person is going through whatever. But if you're able to build trusting relationships, then you'll find that you'll be made privy to things that most people don't know. How do you do this? One of the most powerful ways to build trust is to be vulnerable. Vulnerability begets vulnerability. It's all too easy when people ask how you're doing, especially from the West. Is it like, oh, best day ever, I'm great, I'm having a great time. But it's way more authentic to, when it's true, to say, you know what, I didn't sleep very well last night, I'm not really feeling all at my best. Or I'm really struggling with the assignment that I got last week because I'm trying to understand the requirements. By being vulnerable, you'll find that people will be vulnerable in return. It's just an amazing way that humans are. And by being vulnerable, you'll begin to get a sense of what people really feel and what's going on. By building trusting relationships, I've got information about people who are pregnant, and I'm the first person at work that they've told this information to because they trust me. People have told me that I'm quitting this job because of whatever reason, and I don't have a job lined up with, but they're sharing that with me because I've built trust. I've done the work of being human and connecting with them in a way that goes beyond the superficial. One thing that I do want to caution you about is what's called glue work. Now, Tanya Riley, a friend of the conference, does an amazing talk called glue work. And to simplify the definition, glue work are the tasks that are necessary to keep the big work going. So that's things like refining the backlog, or taking meeting notes, or being an onboarding star, that you are a one-person onboarding team. That when people join the team, you're able to get them up to speed very quickly. And glue work is important. Don't mistake me. Glue work is important, but glue work is often not rewarded. is seen as work that people just bank as important and they're thankful for you. But all too often, when you do a ton of glue work, you spend months doing this, when it comes times to get rewards, you're rated low. You're not getting the rating that you expected given all the investments that you made in glue work. And all too often, women get stuck doing glue work. And then that makes their career progression slow down. So if you're going to do glue work, it's very important that you have an honest conversation with your manager about, do you really reward this? Is this work that at the end of the year or the end of the half, that when we're writing our review, that this work is going to be rewarded by getting more money, getting more benefits, getting a promotion? Because if the answer is no, then I highly recommend that you talk to your manager about not doing this work anymore, because you need to invest in the things that are going to move your career and not just make your manager's job easier. I wish someone told me this years ago. All right, you're now in probably year 5 to 7. You become a manager. Congratulations. One thing that I wish someone told me about becoming a manager is that when you get a team, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Because when you get a team, more than likely, people are going to tell you, well, this is the person, they're burned out. They're probably about to rage quit. This is the person who actually wants your job and is probably going to undermine what you do. Or these two people, they hate each other. And if you make them work together, you're going to have to manage that relationship constantly. Like those little nuances generally are not things that are handed to you when someone hands you a team. Or even like this person is underleveled. They should have been probably promoted a long time ago, or they were hired at the wrong level, or this person's overleveled, right? All these things are things that you really learn along the way. And so it's very important that you see management as a long game. You have to make the long-term investment in the people that you're managing. And that means that the things that you're doing that work now may not work 9 months from now. So you're going to have to constantly always iterate on your management style, because humans are like software, right? Code bases don't stay the same. If they're healthy, they're always changing. They're always going through revisions. There are always new things being merged to production in the humans that you're working with. And you have to constantly be able to interrogate your team and find out, well, what's best for my team right now? Because what happened last month or last quarter ain't working anymore. So it's important that you invest in the long-term growth of your team. So how do you know that you're being effective as a manager? Again, the previous speaker did a great job about one-on-ones. If people come to your one-on-ones and they're engaged and they're responding to the truth and the feelings that they're sharing with you, and then you're giving that vulnerability back, if they're adding topics to the agenda, that's a good sign that that person is invested in your management style and they're trusting you to guide them in your career. So it's very important that as a manager, you use one-on-ones as a way to understand how things are going with your team. All right, a few things that I want to go over as a manager. It's not just your direct reports, because I think as a manager, we tend to think, well, if my team's good, then I'm good. And actually, when you become a manager, you have a new team. There are other managers. There are other probably engineering managers that you're working with. There are product managers that you're working with. And your relationship with those new team members is essential. These other managers are sometimes not people managers. So they don't want to hear about this person over here who might be having a breakdown, or this person over here who's been sick for 2 weeks. All they care about often are results. And so it's very important that as you manage this new team, this horizontal team of other managers, that you understand that you have to get results. The other thing that I'll say about becoming a manager is that I had no idea that documentation is so important. Documenting performance problems, documenting what's going on with the team. That weekly status report, you probably want to spend more than 5 times writing that, because you are telling the story of your team, and it's essential that you do that. And again, when talking about your reports, impact, not just activity. You want to be able to be the person that can tell the story of the impact that your team is having on what the company cares about. All right, I know that Denise, you talked about side quests, so this is my side quest for today. As a manager, it is so important to be able to say no. And again, as an American, we are not good at saying no. Because we think, wow, you trust me enough to ask me to do this thing? But the problem with saying yes to everything is that you're probably saying no to things that are really important to you. And so it's very important to be able to say no. So I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly, but there are a few ways to say no and maintain the relationship. You can say, actually, I know you want me to do this thing, but my workload is really heavy right now, and I won't be able to do that. Or you can say, you know what? I dedicated myself to doing this, and if I say yes to this, then I'm going to compromise my own integrity in doing this. Or you can say, you know what? This thing that you've asked me to do, you've already asked me to do 3 other things that I'm working on. That's going to push these things out. Is that okay? Or this is from chess, from chess, the game of chess. You can castle. You can say, well, I cannot do this, but you know what? I can do that, right? And so finally, polish. You can say, if I take this on, I'm not going to do it to the quality standards that you would expect. So I think I'm going to have to say no. So these are nice little elegant ways to say no. A word about members of underrepresented group or marginalized people who are managers. I'm one of them. Now, it's very common that when you see something that you've never seen before, to maybe think that it's weird, right? So we all went outside right now, and it was raining Vegemite, not even in Australia. We would think, what's wrong? That's unusual. And for a lot of people, and again, especially if you have a person of color, you're probably the first person of color that they've had as a manager, right? Even in 2024. And so you have to be aware that there might be some skepticism. And it may not be racism, it may not be anything else, might not be sexism, but it may be weird for that person. And so my advice for you is to navigate that as kindly and as carefully as you can. But I know this is hard. One previous speaker talked about grief brain, right? When you've been through trauma and you're grieving. Even speaking can be tough and you're not at your best. Well, I'm sure that there's probably racism brain or sexism brain or homophobia brain. That when you're going through these things, it's hard to be your best when you're one among many. But the good news is that every day, people of color, women, or gay friends do amazing work. So let's support them in doing that amazing work. So I've shared a few things throughout a career, from that first year to the first few years to becoming a manager. What does this all mean? How can we connect this all together? What thread goes through all these phases? Well, I think the common thread is connection. When you're first trying to get that job, you want to connect the things that you do to the job that they're hiring for. When you're in your first few years, you want to be able to connect the impact of your work to the business concerns of the company. When you're trying to go through becoming more involved in your career and getting respect, you want to deeply connect with other people through building trust. And if you're trying to become a manager and be effective, you want to connect with the other managers in your part of the org. If you can build connections throughout your career, you'll be able to send it in any direction that you want. When I started this talk, I wanted to drive home the idea that your career is not something that happens to you. You have agency in what you want it to be, so guide it carefully. Thank you.